Hello, this is Jyotika. Welcome to Excelling Psychology. I want to begin solving May June papers on my channel. So I decided that today I will solve with you a paper, like I'll walk you through it. Then I decided to take a little different approach. I have a paper that's been solved by a student, and I thought, why not show you how these papers are scored? So of course in the process we will be discussing which are some good answers, which are bad answers, how we can improve answers. So all of that is going to be there. But why not have some common mistakes in front of us so that we can learn from them and avoid doing them ourselves. So in today's class I am discussing paper 1 variant 2 from May June 2024. I don't think I'll be able to complete discussing the entire paper. I have about half an hour for today. Let's do our best. So let's try to cover as many questions as possible, but of course understanding as we go through why the answers are being scored in a certain way. Okay, the first question that came in this paper was, the first stage of the study by Bandura et al. Was when children were rated on 4 scales by the experimenter and a nursery school teacher. One of these scales was aggressive inhibition. Identify one of the other scales used in the first stage. The student has completely left this answer blank, which is of course going to lead her to a score of 0. And why these type of answers are not attempted at all by students? This is very common because they do not spend that much time memorizing the finer details of studies. Students have too much aversion towards learning finer details, and they just leave it aside for the last minute, and then many times they end up not doing it at all, even in the last minute. It is a requirement of your course. In paper 1 there are going to be questions which are totally memory based and which can come from anywhere in the study. To score highly you will have to learn those details. So it's better to accept this, overcome the aversion, and start learning all finer details right from the beginning. This is also why I insist that you learn from the textbook. Many notes are available, quick notes are available online which students swear by. Those notes help you to clear the exam. They don't help you score very high. The textbook and original papers can help you get high scores. So for this answer in particular, one of the scales is mentioned. If we've learned Bandura et al. Properly, right at the beginning of the procedure, we get to see the names of 3 other scales. One being physical aggression scale, the other verbal aggression scale, and finally a scale measuring aggression towards inanimate objects. The command term is identify, which means that you just have to name one of these scales. So you can quickly just note down. You don't even need to write a complete sentence. Verbal aggression scale. Okay, that's all that is needed for 1 mark. In fact, I feel it's very easy to memorize these details and score because many students are weak in explaining points which come in the questions ahead. So in fact, by memorizing some details, you can easily collect a few points which will not go anywhere. Next question is, outline how the children were assigned to one of the conditions in the study. Okay, one mistake which students make in this type of question is not to read the question carefully. Instead of how, they will read why, and then they will end up justifying, matching and randomly assigning students. That is not what has been asked for. How means they want the procedural details. What did the researchers do exactly to put students in different conditions? Okay, so make sure to read the question carefully. Let's read the student's answer for this one. So based on results of aggressive inhibition, participants were assigned to either aggressive, non-aggressive or control condition. The first mistake the student has made here is to say based on results of aggressive inhibition. What is aggressive inhibition? Right? That is not clear. So this is definitely not scoring anything. The student, we can understand, is trying to refer to this procedure which was mentioned earlier in 1A, that is scoring of children on aggression. So it should have been aggression scoring, not inhibition. Okay, so this sentence fails to make sense. So that is why it's not going to get any marks. Besides that, she has mentioned they were assigned to different conditions, but where is the key word? Random. Because this begs the question, assigned how? So we have to mention assigned randomly. Also, she has not mentioned how they were arranged in triplets, groups of 3 according to the scores they had received. So there's a very superficial and vague idea which the student has given, which is not counting for anything because it's not detailed at all. Here the student again will get 0. Many times students feel we have written so much, and they will insist and they will argue, I wrote assignment, I named the conditions, still I did not get marks. Now do you see why? Because the key details are not there in the answer. Instead of this, the student should have written, based on the results of scoring on aggression, participants were arranged in triplets. And what was a triplet? A triplet was a set of 3 students or 3 children who got the same aggression scores. And then they were randomly assigned to either aggressive, non-aggressive or control condition. If the student would have written this way, instead of the vague way in which she has written, she would have scored full 2 marks. Writing a lot of words will not help you score unless you meet the requirements of the answer. Okay. Next is they have asked for 2 features of the final experimental room used in the test for delayed imitation. One thing she has mentioned that the room had aggressive and non-aggressive toys, which is correct. Instead of this, you could also mention that there were, you can name specific toys. So you could say that there was a Bobo doll, there was a Mollet, Tinker Toys, crayon set. But this is also right, the way she's put it. Also, she's mentioned there was a one-way mirror, which we know was there for observation of the children. So here she'll score 2 marks. In the third question, again the command term is identify. So one thing is to be to the point, like the student has been. Second thing is, where students can make a mistake in this type of answer is to confuse the rooms which were there. Bandura's study is very deceptively simple. Like students feel it's very easy, but they confuse a lot in the finer details of the study. In Bandura, there are 3 rooms. The first is where modeling takes place. Second is where instigation of aggression takes place, the game room. And third is the room of test for delayed imitation, where children are actually assessed for whether they are being aggressive or not. Here they are asking you about that third room. So if any of you is making a mistake to describe toys in the other rooms or to describe any features of the first or second room, you're going to be losing marks. So make sure your answer is about the third room. Okay, so here you can see why and how the student has scored 2 marks out of 5 in the Bandura study answers. In my opinion, the answers were easy to score had the student read the procedure carefully for this study. So these, in my opinion, are marks that are lost for not much reason. Okay, let's come to the next one, Android study, which is very popular and easy. The first question they have asked is outline the experimental design used in the study. So here the student is right, independent measures design. One thing I want to point out immediately, even after months of explaining, some students will keep on confusing between research method and experimental design. Don't be careless about your base concepts. Research method refers to the larger technique used for investigation in a study. So your experiments, case study, questionnaire, interview, correlation, these are your research methods. Experimental designs, firstly from the name only you should understand, they strictly refer to experiments and they refer to how participants are allocated to various conditions of the study. So experimental designs include matched pairs, repeated measures and independent measures design. So here she is right in naming the design. The command term is outline and the answer is for 2 marks. She has named the design correctly. She has given some reasoning which is not specific to Android study. Participants only did the task once. What task is being referred to, what did they do once is not specified here. Second thing, even the reasoning is not correct. Independent measures design does not mean that there is one task which you do only once. Okay, it has to be phrased in a better way. So here the student will get 1 mark for naming the experimental design, but 2nd mark for explanation of why the design is that, or the justification, which has to be specific to Android study, is not going to score anything here. The task once, instead of that, firstly she should mention that any one participant was only in one condition. It's not about the task, it's about the condition or level of the IV, and of course which condition or level was there in this study. That is what she needs to specify. So she should have mentioned each participant either participated in doodling or non-doodling control condition. It is as simple as that to score marks. Okay, let's look at the next one. Outline one conclusion from this study. Conclusions always follow the aims, as we know, and for this study the aim is particularly easy. Android just wanted to see whether doodling can improve attention and memory for boring tasks, so the conclusion should follow that. Conclusion is not a results based answer. Numbers are not required, data is not required. In fact, giving a result would be considered as incorrect. So for example, if a student writes the doodling group correctly wrote down 7.8 names on an average, whereas the non-doodling group wrote only 7.1 names, that will be marked as wrong. That's a result, that's not a conclusion. A result is specific data and conclusion is the broader theoretical generalization. So here the student has mentioned doodling improves concentration when the task is boring and helps in retaining information. This is a correct conclusion. It is to do with the larger concept of doodling and not the specific means earned by any group in this study. So that is why she'll get full marks. Also, if you see in the conclusion, she's mentioned both memory, retaining and concentration, that is attention. That also helps to score well. So you can see on the Android study, she scores 3 out of 4. Again, in my opinion, getting full 4 was not difficult for this answer. Sufficient practice of past papers would have easily resulted in 4 out of 4. Because these type of questions, experimental design and all, they come very frequently. So it's not suddenly some question is thrown at students. Students are expected to be practiced well with writing these type of answers. Let's come to section B, which is from Dement and Kleitman study. Sorry, not section B, question 3. It's still section A. Here they have asked firstly one result in relation to REM sleep and dream recall. Ideally, in results type of answers, there should be some numbers which are given. Here you can see she has given a percentage. So she has given data which is good. Okay, first let's read the answer. Dream recall mostly occurred during REM sleep. It is very important when there is a study in which there are comparisons, because of course in experiment there's going to be at least 2 levels of IV or 2 conditions. We need to specify what the other condition is. Mostly dreaming occurred in REM stage of sleep. Compared to what? That question is begged. When you write REM sleep mostly, then remaining took place when? There has to be a mention of NREM sleep. That is important. And this is true for every study. Okay, so keep it in mind, make it a fast rule in your mind. In any study, when you say in this condition performance was better, in that condition performance was worse, compared to what? You must specify what is the other condition. So here the students definitely losing 1 mark. Again, what I was mentioning earlier, I want to reiterate that because students come up with that a lot. So they'll come to the teacher and keep on insisting, but I wrote that dreaming occurs during REM sleep. Are you seeing, despite writing that, why you would not get marks? Because you have not mentioned NREM sleep. Such details matter. For this answer, like I said, ideally there should be some figure, but if we see in the mark scheme this time, they have not insisted for a figure. I don't know why that has been done. So here the student will score 1 out of 2 just for the sentence she is given at the beginning. The second sentence where she mentions that on 80% awakenings they reported dreams, it is correct, but it will not be credited, it's not required. In the first sentence itself, she has completed the answer. Okay, so that is one thing. Next is outline one result in relation to dream duration estimates when participants were woken up 15 minutes after onset of REM sleep. Now this is from the second aim of the study. Second aim has to do with 5 and 15 minute dream duration estimates. Out of that, you can see they have mentioned only 15 minutes, not 5 minutes. So as such, many of you all must have recalled the results for both 5 and 15 minutes, but giving the 5-minute dream duration estimate here would not be credited because it's not required by the question. So you have to be able to talk about the 15-minute dream duration. So firstly, the student writes, participants were able to determine whether they had been dreaming for 5 or 15 minutes, which is correct because overall we have seen they could give dream duration estimates with good amount of accuracy. So this result is correct. But when they have asked for 15 minutes, like I said, something specific to 15 minutes has to be there. Now here the student says, on 83% of 111 awakenings, they were right, which is again correct, but the but is, this is a combined result for 5 and 15 minute duration which she is given, whereas they have asked for 15 minutes. See, when an aim is about 2 type of estimates, why do you think they have asked for only 1? Because of course they want you to respond specific to that. So again, for whatever she has written, it is credit worthy because saying that they were accurate, they were able to determine and accuracy was high is right, but it cannot achieve 2 marks because either she should have given the 78% duration accuracy which was specific to 15 minutes, either she should have given that, or she should have made at least some comparison and said that in 15 minutes they were they were worse in their estimate as compared to 5 minutes. In some way the result should have been made specific to 15 minutes, which she has not made. That's where she's losing a mark. Overall, Dement and Kleitman study somehow seems to be challenging for students. It's one of the oldest studies in the syllabus. It's been there from a much earlier version of the syllabus, and to date, students are not coping well with this study. It is very easy. I think the problem lies with, in my opinion, not reading the original paper. By now, I think all students should be reading the original Dement and Kleitman paper. Though the Hodder textbook this time is excellent and it's really covered every study very well, still somehow I feel the textbooks are lacking a little bit when it comes to covering this study. Students don't understand basics of this study, such as how many participants were studied in detail, how many were on standby. They don't understand basics like participants have been referred to by their initials and every participant had a different pattern of dreaming. Most students are not able to understand these details of the study. So if you've reached this point in the video, I will strongly recommend read the original Dement and Kleitman paper, because this is one study you should not be taking lightly, looking at the way students respond to it in the papers. Next, they have asked explain one weakness of this study. This is like I would say a free fund type of question, good bonus type of question, anywhere where such a question comes, because when they just say give one weakness and they don't specify with relation to say generalizability or validity or anything particular, you are free to write whichever weakness you know best. So it's very easy to score on these type of answers, because for your 10 markers for every study, which hopefully you prepare and keep, you must be preparing 2 strengths and 2 weaknesses for the study. Literally you can just pick up one weakness that you've prepared for this study for the 10 marker and print it here. That's how easy it is to score. So here the student has said it's lacking ecological validity, which is correct. It's a lab study. Unfortunately, there is no specific elaboration given by the student. Generic responses. What do we mean by generic response? Basics. Non-specific to the study. Can be applied to any study of this nature without any change. The same statement if I give for Perry et al., if I give for uh, that one milligram, if I give it for Bandura, it will apply everywhere. How does it show my knowledge of Dement and Kleitman? Generic responses always bring down answers by 50%. Okay, so answers should always be specific. A generic response can be a starting point for an answer. It cannot be the complete answer, which means that here the student needed to give some specific example of a task or the setting which made the study lack ecological validity. In Dement and Kleitman, there are numerous examples of why the study is not ecologically valid. One being the lab environment, the placement of the EEG machines with the electrodes connected to the participant's scalp. Simply the way the beds were arranged, participants had to sleep in a room that was quiet and dark, which is not the usual arrangement in anybody's home. Or the task, we can talk about having to get up repeatedly and report dreams, being awoken by a bell and reporting dreams and going off to sleep again. That is not usually how people sleep in their homes. There are so many possibilities to point out and elaborate exactly what is unrealistic about this study which is bringing down ecological validity. Just leaving it at ecological validity is lacking, again shows lack of practice of answers and lack of critical thinking. So easy 2 marks which have been reduced by 50% because of this type of response. So the Dement and Kleitman study in June 24 variant 2 came for 6 marks. The student has scored 3. The first 2 answers I can still empathize. Many students are confused a lot about procedure and results. But the third answer, at least I would say, the student should have easily been able to score 2 marks. Why I give this type of overview is to show you where the easy scoring answers are which can really bring up your marks. In psychology, you know, every mark counts. 1 mark. Literally, I have students every year, 1 mark, and they shift down from one grade to the next. Okay, so easily scoring answers, at least you should not be losing marks. Coming to the next one, came from Milgram. Outline what is meant by obedience. Okay, obedience, key things, you know, commands, orders, that needs to be mentioned, and authoritative figure. This is totally from psychology being investigated. So authority figure, order, command, those are the key terminology which have been used to explain the concept of obedience. Definitely that is what is required in the answer. Let's see what the student writes. Okay, one thing is, I know spellings are not important still. In the question only when the spelling is there, why make a mistake? Obedience is when one person does the order given by another person. Okay, follows would have been better, but it's okay, I don't want to nitpick. By another person who they perceive of as an authority figure. Here the student will score 2 marks. The answer is correct. Like I said, key words being looked out for when obedience is asked: orders, commands, and authority figure. She's covered both. Okay, I don't have anything else much to discuss in this. Next is outline how one ethical guideline was broken in the study. Very easy answer. Very lucky students who got to write this answer, because you know in Milgram there are major ethical issues and there are multiple of them. So very easy to answer this one. The student has selected psychological harm, and I'm very pleased right at the beginning because psychological harm she has named. Whenever they ask for an ethical guideline, you must name which guideline you're discussing. Many students have a habit that they will just go on discussing something like participants were disturbed, distressed, but they'll never name the guideline. They won't say that harm was being done to the participants. So regardless of you're talking about deception, harm, consent, withdrawal, many issues are applicable to this study. Name the issue. Out of 3, 1 mark you'll get just for naming the issue correctly. Okay, and then she's explained further because she's saying 3 participants had full-blown seizures. This is relevant. It does go to show that they suffered psychological harm. In fact, in this case, even physical harm is there. Nevertheless, she's mentioned harm. That is important. Some participants may have suffered long-term psychological harm because they went against their morals and gave an innocent man a 450-volt shock. Correct. Both the points which she's made to elaborate and show how there was psychological harm are correct. She has mentioned that they were given shocks. She's also specified what would count for short term and what would count for long term harm. Good critical thinking is seen. Justifies 3 marks because 1 mark naming, 2 points for elaboration. Each receives 1 mark. So this is a good way of answering. Okay, so no matter which issue you're naming, say instead of this, if you're taking deception, that's also a popular one with Milgram. In that also you can make sure that you write at least 1 or 2 examples, or at least 1 elaborate example why there's deception. So say for example you're saying the teaching learning task was fake, so you need to specify that actually shocks were not being administered, or that the learner was just pretending to receive shocks but the participant felt as if really shocks are being given. So good critical thinking, showing that you've understood why something is being referred to as deception. If you present the answer that way, it's very easy to score. Okay, let's take up this as the last answer for this video. Remaining answers I'll cover in the next one. Suggest at least 1 application to everyday life of the study by Holzel et al. Do not refer to more than 3 applications in your answer. Your suggestion must be ethical. Many students are taken aback by this question when we had discussed later in the paper. At the time when June papers went, many students said that they did not expect the application type of answer to come for 5 marks. It's not the first time that they have asked for 4 or 5 marks. It has come in the past. So I will not say that it's unexpected. It's just that these type of answers come rarely. But given that it came for Holzel et al., in fact, I think this was very easy to score. Like the board really gave a chance to students to score this time. Holzel et al. Is a very practical study. That's why it's very practically oriented. It's very easy to talk about application because the study is intended only to be an application of mindfulness. Only thing what you need to consider is when they ask you for 5 marks, like they have in fact hinted in the question itself, you can take 1 application, elaborate a lot on that. And what do I mean by elaborate a lot? Draw parallels between the study and what could be done in actual life. So that way you can suggest exactly how mindfulness could be implemented in some area. Easily you will be able to give 4 or 5 points. So you could take a depth approach this way by taking 1 application, or you could take a breadth approach. You could take multiple applications, say 3. And of course you're not to just name any application. The answer is for 5 marks, so only naming or identification won't do. Like if I say the result should be applied to employees, military personnel, school students, that is not the way of answering anything. Even if you're taking a breadth approach, at least some amount of explanation should be there, like depth. So that is important. But if you're taking this approach like breadth versus depth, in that case you could just give 2 sentences explanation for each point. I will return to this. First let's see what the student has written. She says that due to academic stress or work stress, it is vital to incorporate mindfulness based stress reduction technique. This is because it triggers neural changes and leads to improving well-being of students and employees as well. So she's justified why she's saying that students and employees will benefit, because there'll be neural changes. Of course it would be more desirable to say there would be positive neural changes, or that memory and learning would improve, relaxation would be induced, something like that. That would have made it even more specific. MBSR could benefit because employees will be more productive and there will be less amount of sick days. This is also very relevant. Not only she said how benefit will be there through neural mechanisms, what will be the benefits also she has mentioned. It's really good, but still I would say does not justify 5 marks. To score 5 marks on this type of answer, like I said, she is more oriented towards a depth approach. She's spoken about students, but she elaborates more on employees. So when she's elaborating on employees, to justify 5 marks, coming back to how she could elaborate a lot, she could have written that there would be group sessions for the employees. Maybe she could propose that a training session would take place in the workplace itself, that there would be 45 minutes practice exercises to be done daily, or maybe she could propose that some yoga space or sitting meditation space provision could be made in the office. Like I said, there's a lot of scope for elaboration when it comes to wholesale study. So since she's oriented towards one application, mainly in the workplace, she could have elaborated this way, like just drawing parallels between what they did in this study and how those steps could be implemented by employees. That would justify full 5 marks. Or else she could have taken a breadth approach, and where she's mentioned academic stress, 1 or 2 sentences on how students could benefit in schools, what provisions could be made. Just like she said that employees would be more productive and take less amount of sick leaves, something she could have said that would be relevant to students, like they would take less absences, they would turn up on time for class, they would be punctual, they would be able to participate more fully in curricular and extracurricular activities. Like this sort of elaboration she could have done. Either case, she would have made room for more 1 or 2 marks. As of now, where the answer stands, I would take it as there is some detail in the answer. Definitely there is some detail with respect to one application that is employee based. There is some detail. Where I will reduce marks is how the application will be achieved is not very clear. She mentions there's neural benefit, but what do employees have to do to gain that benefit? Like I said, they need to do daily exercises, they need to attend group sessions. That is not very clear. When it comes to application questions, how things can be put to practice, how they will be implemented is a very key consideration. Especially when they're awarding you 5 marks, they want to know exactly how the findings or the procedure of that study can be applied. How is not answered very well in this answer, though it is relevant. So I would give this answer 3 marks. Okay, why I'm giving it 3 marks, I'll just repeat, because there is some detail, the application is relevant, it is identified correctly. And why I'm deducting marks, because the how part of it, or exactly how MBSR should be implemented for the employees, has not been given. Today, like I said, I'm stopping here. In the next video, we will continue from question 6. If you have any doubts or questions about this video, please post it in the comments box below. Do not call me or email me for doubts regarding the video. I will not be responding on call for this. Okay, thank you for watching. Until next time.